Hear us out.
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 Hear me out.
Hear us out.
Hear
Hear
us
us
out.
out.
Hear us
Hear
out.
us
Hear us
out.
out.
Hear us out.
Hear us out, man.
Hear us out. Hear us out.
Hear us out. Hear us out.
Hear us out.
Hear us out. Yo, okay. Hear me out? No. Hear you out. Hear me out. Hear us out.
Hey folks, you're listening to the Hear Us Out show brought to you by Phillycam Community Radio, coming at you live from WPPM LP Philadelphia 106.5 FM and from the Phillycam Facebook page. I'm JT here with Ramses and Keyssh, and on today's show we'll be talking about commodification and what it entails. We have special guest Sid, who can give us their opinions on commodification as well as how it ties into the rent strike that has been going on. Then later, we'll vibe to some sweet, sweet tunes provided by Joshua Mitchell. So be sure to stick around and hear us out. So today we're going to talk about commodification and what it entails. Now, some of you might be saying, commodification, what's that? Well, simply put, commodification is the action or process of treating something as a mere commodity, which is a raw material that can be bought or sold, such as copper or coffee. So, what's your overall opinion on commodification? All good? All bad? Bit of both? What do you think? Opinions on commodification? Where do you stand?
Well, honestly, my main opinion on commodification is that it's all bad, just because I guess it kind of devalues just the effect that it has on the workers, right? So another aspect of commodification is that a commodity is something where it doesn't matter who produced it, right? So when something is commodified, at the same time, the person who's producing it no longer has any value in and of themselves, because they're making this kind of irrelevant or mass produced type thing, you know?
I mean, but if the person who produced it, they're still producing it, it's just being mass produced on a larger scale, so they're still getting some of that profit. So wouldn't that also be considered a good thing?
Yeah, but I mean, it's just bread is just bread. At the same time, it's it factors into a bigger thing, that it's just is a person's living, their form of life shouldn't just be making these basic terms that aren't necessarily not that aren't necessary, but people should be valued for the things that they do, even if they're making money off of it. A person should still be honored. Farmers shouldn't just be seen as these faceless hicks behind all our onions or whatever, you know? That's kind of what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, I agree. Like commodification in no way can be positive because it's like you're taking from somebody else's culture and you're making a profit without giving it back to them. And this is like a touching topic for me because when you look at hip hop and how the Black American community is so dehumanized, but those same people that are doing the dehumanizing has the ability to take their culture and sell it back. But we don't necessarily make a profit off of what is being sold. So I think the commodification negatively is impacted when you see there's people gatekeepers of different industries and they're making a profit off the artists that are selling. So ownership comes into play where commodification has a negative connotation. So yeah.
I can see that. But commodification could be applied to more than just small things such as goods, as in farm products and copper. It can be applied to non-physical things such as holidays, which today happens to be, as in Cinco de Mayo. So things like that can be commodified. What
Oh,
do you guys think of that?
whatchamacallit, something else that I found out today scrolling through Instagram, it's also it's also Karl Marx's birthday, and he wrote Capital, which is basically breaks down the aspects of commodity production and commodification. So it's actually like I didn't even like realize this when like we first pitched it, but it's actually pretty momentous.
Oh wow.
But yeah, I know, right? It's crazy. I had no clue. But I'm sorry. Can you repeat your question again?
I'm good. Okay, I said one of the things that could be commodified besides just the small goods and farming things could be
Mm-hmm.
holidays, which is today Cinco de Mayo. What do you guys think of that?
How I think about that is I think it's like once again when you have cultures that are dehumanized and shipped away from their culture, and you have people that are in America that attack different communities like the Mexican community, but then you have them taking their culture and trying to display it in a negative light or just trying to make profit off of something that they do not own. So yeah, I think that it's very interesting to see how capitalism influences a lot of people decisions to take from minorities, and it like just continues a cycle of oppression. So yeah.
The same white boys, like the same frat boys who were like holding torches or whatever a couple years ago, are probably getting blasted today. But yeah, that's basically all I have to say on that joke.
So, also another thing that could be tied into the whole commodification thing would be the rent strike. So, what do you guys think about that?
Oh, like people should. Well, like I don't know. I'm kind of like bonkers in like sense that I don't believe in private property and stuff. But I think like just even now, like in a time of crisis, it's not necessarily as bonkers to think that people should have their not have to pay rent, like not have to fear for like being put out on the street and stuff. And something relevant that I heard was that like even is rent is like for load, which is just like it's just pushed to the side. It's like how are people gonna pay that rent like later on down the line, right? Because they haven't had like they're not having jobs and stuff, you know? And it's like I guess it's like commodification of land and commodification of housing. And it's like these people aren't being valued as people. They're just being valued as tenants.
Yeah, and another interesting thing about housing properties and renting out different spaces, specifically in Philadelphia, is that there's when you go into to get a rent to get a house to rent or get land to rent, the person that owns that takes in consideration how many kids you have, this and that, and how well you're going to be able to attain that space, or if you will be able to pay it. And the higher people who have a higher amount of children actually don't get signed to have that property because they feel that they kids are not a liability. So it's just interesting to see how there's already a politic tick in housing and renting properties, but then when you add the coronavirus into it, it goes into a deeper thing of where people are being oppressed because of lack of money or lack of social economic status. So yeah.
Wow, that was a good answer. And that's all the time we have for the discussion. And up next, we have a special guest who's going to elaborate even more on commodification and how it ties really well into the rent strike. But first, we have a short break. So stay tuned.
Why don't you show me, baby, come hold me, play with my heartstrings. Why don't you show me, baby, come hold me, play with my heartstrings. Show me what love will be. I'll call you later. We'll think about maybe in the notion of dreams.
And we're back with the special edition of the Hear Us Out show, the Commodity Edition, brought to you by WPPM LP Philadelphia, 106.5 FM, Philly Camp Community Radio. coming to you live on both the main station and Facebook. You just heard the musical stylings of our great artist Joshua Mitchell. That was his song Show Me. Be sure to stick around to see him perform live later on his ukulele. Now, on to today's interview. Today we have a super awesome guest by the name of Sid Shigematsu. Sid is a craniosacral therapist, a Philadelphia-based activist, nature lover, and future bathhouse proprietor. Sid expects greatness, especially from great people. They encourage you to do independent research about rent strikes in your area. So yeah, super happy to see you. Hey.
Hey, y'all. Thanks for having
Hi.
me. I'm super excited to be here.
Hey.
Glad to have
We're
you
super
here.
excited to have you. Yeah. I guess can you tell us a little bit about yourself to start off? Like give some context, I suppose. Or I guess how would you describe yourself, you know?
Yeah, I think a lot of what y'all touched on before the break really summed it up. Commodification is when you take a basic human necessity or an artisanal product and you make it fast capital. So easy to produce, everyone needs to have it, and then you produce ads and like a culture around it of advertising that says everyone needs to have this. So even on the subject of housing, which I think housing is a human right, housing is something that we should all be able to have access to. But what's happened now is you have landowners and land renting class, and then you have, the renters and the rentees. So it's the commodification of a basic human right. And I think we have a lot of that going on here in America. Obviously, commodification of the healthcare system, commodification of, access to food, access to healthy food, and even as far as commodification of the counterculture, I think that's a really big thing that especially activists and people on the radical left struggle with all the time, because you have this like hype around, like, I call it pseudo anarchism, especially you see on Instagram and on social media. People will like a post, but not do any direct action to even go out and contact their landlord or try to organize with people who are their neighbors or even talk to their neighbors. So how does that relate to me? I mean, I grew up in New York City, which I know Philadelphians are like, boo, and I do respect that. And a big part of the reason why I respect that is because the culture of New York City is so hyper commodified to the point where you have all of these people coming in from out of state and creating a culture of buying and selling as the only thing that's valued, especially in New York City, where you have such a strong immigrant population and such strong historical communities of color that are now being pushed out because of this commodification of housing, right? Where housing is not seen as a human right. Housing is seen as something to make money off of. So one of the biggest problems I have with New York City, and especially like the neighborhood I grew up in, which is the Lower East Side, which has now been taken over by NYU, Cooper Union, all those big colleges around there, and people who have bought into this commodification of the counterculture, which is to say that the Lower East Side used to be, historical Cuban and Puerto Rican and Black neighborhood where a lot of anarchists and like hippie type people moved in over the 60s. And then when the city went bankrupt in the 70s and 80s and we experienced the crack epidemic, you had this kind of cultural hub in the Lower East Side. And then when I was growing up, everyone thought that was really cool. This commodification of punk culture, the counterculture, of radical culture, is to try to become involved, but only up to the point where everyone sees you being involved and there's no actual action to come of that. So commodification has really impacted my life, because the area where I grew up is completely gentrified over the top to the point where I hate to be there. Like, I really do. When I go home, I hang out in Tompkins Square Park by myself because you can't get a cup of coffee, you can't get a sandwich, you can't get a Lucy from the bodega anymore, because the neighborhood has been so commodified to the point where it's no longer safe for or feasible for those community members who were previously selling a $1 slice of pizza or a quick bacon, egg, and cheese, to be able to make rent money in that neighborhood, because it's been seen to be cool to be punk. And so, yeah, I think I'm really pissed off at commodification, just as a general theme in America at large, because now it's created this situation where a lot of people don't have access to clean and healthy and fresh food. A lot of people don't have access to clean, fresh water. A lot of people do not have access to affordable housing. And it's because the culture of capitalism and the money hungry grab bag is that if we advertise it and they buy it, then it's worth it. And I personally cannot agree.
I guess like building off of that, do you think like a lot of like artists and people in general may face like challenges with like self commodification and stuff? So
Oh,
like what are ways that we can what are ways that I guess we can like engage in like self care or like just kind of like separate ourselves from having to sell ourselves?
ooh. Yeah, that's a really good question, and
Mhm.
honestly, something that I struggle with as someone who owns my own business and has 6
Mhm.
logical planets in Capricorn. You know, the money making
Mhm.
sign. But I gotta say that the harder we strive towards like mutual aid based communities and
Mhm.
like groups of people that support each other on a deep emotional, intellectual, spiritual level versus just on a financial level, then we are actually able to create models of business. I believe mean models of supporting each other that have more to do with maybe like the barter system or equitable pricing and like acknowledgement of systematic injustice so that you factor that into how your business is formed. And on the topic of self-care, it's just so important to like be out in nature, in my opinion, and like take breaks
Mhm.
if possible. I don't know if you hear like the birds chirping behind me. I don't know if they're creating bad feedback.
Yeah,
Um,
that's
but yeah, it's really, really incredibly tough because you have to, make money to make rent, right? On some level,
Mhm.
forced into these systems where if rent is the only way we can stay housed, then we have to reframe, you know, we have to reframe how we're able to make our funds and our money to make rent, or how the landlord tenant relationship exists. Because as it exists today, it is extremely equitable to the point where folks are getting illegally evicted and kicked out on the street in the midst of a not a national, global crisis the world over. So I forgot your question. I hope I answered it.
Yeah, no, that was fine. Thank you. So, do you have any closing statements or anything like that?
Closing statements. Rent strike is possible. I think the more
Mhm.
that people try to perpetuate the notion that rent strike or revolution are not possible, or you're waiting for a big event to happen to culminate to create some sort of movement, it's time to catch up. We're in it. This is the moment. We've been doing this. A lot of people have been fighting for these moments for years. The revolution
Mhm.
is now, the revolution is every day. And when we can reframe abundance from what can I get from someone else into what can I give so that I can receive, I think that we would have a much better world.
Fantastic. And where can we find you on like social media or your website or whatever?
Website to come. I'm on
Mhm.
Instagram at cranio.sacred. That's cranio, CRANIO, with a period, sacred,
Mhm.
SACRED. And my name is Sid. Hit me up.
Cool, sweet. Yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks.
Thanks for inviting me on.
Thank you.
Have
No
a great
problem.
job.
And that's all today we have for the interview. And now it's time for our resources. So if you're one of the people struggling to pay rent, there's some things you can do. According to Nick Valida from the Inquirer, Camdean Morris, a lawyer with Community Legal Service of Philadelphia's housing unit, recommends reaching out to your landlord as soon as possible to explain the situation, preferably in writing. That way, he says, you'll be able to request an accommodation or exception, and you'll have evidence of an agreement should you need it. Also, Community Legal Services of Philadelphia will be having live streams on Tuesdays weekly about what you can do during the COVID time to help you pay with the rent. There's also Philadelphia's tenant union will be offering support in 3 forms: emergency anti-eviction task force, a rent strike fund, and organizing support. And that's all we have for the resources. Now we're going to go on to our artistic expressions.
So today our musical guest is none other than Joshua Mitchell. Josh Mitchell is a Philadelphia-based singer-songwriter. He's known for his bone-chilling vibrato and crazy onstage presence, and he was a former Hear Us Out host, and he worked on the show. So he's gonna be performing his song "Till the Morning Comes" on his ukulele.
Look, you got to get that hydration in before singing. Hey everybody, how's it going? My name's Joshua Mitchell, and today I'm going to be singing a song called Till the Morning Comes. And yeah, it's just basically about doing some stuff you're not supposed to be doing with a person you're not supposed to be doing, per se. Yeah, so this is Till the Morning Comes. We move so fast when together, not even lightning could catch us. I'm not too fond of whole weather. Your summer breeze suits me better. Over the night, come take a ride. Peer in your eyes, it feels so right. Over the night, come take a ride. Peer in your eyes, it feels so right. Until the morning comes, we are our only ones. We are our only ones. Until the morning comes, you feel like you're the one, but we are not our ones, yeah. Two birds attached by a feather, as if this could last forever. But I want to savor this pleasure. You want to use your fever vendetta for the same night, but for the night, can you be mine? I hold you tight. Oh, for the night, can you be mine? I hold you tight. This is so wrong, but it feels so right. Until the morning comes, we are our only ones. We are our only ones. Until the morning comes, you feel like you're the one, but we are not our ones, yeah. Ooh, we move so fast when together, but I want to savor this pleasure. But danger's right round the corner. It's making our love hit that much better. Oh, you used your feet for vendetta, but I was in it for pleasure. No, nothing but pleasure. Oh, my reasons wasn't much better. No, they wasn't much better. No, they wasn't much better. But for tonight, can you be mine? I hold you tight. It feels so right. Oh, for tonight, can you be mine? I hold you tight. This is so wrong, but it feels so right. Until the morning comes, we are our only ones. We are our only ones. Until the morning comes, you feel like you're the one, but we are not ones. Thank you, everybody.
Great job.
So
music.
Loved it. So
that was great. Where can we find you?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm on Instagram, Joshua Mitchell _music. And yeah, like through my Instagram, you can link to my YouTube and all of this other stuff. But
so
yeah.
is there any other songs you have on your YouTube?
Yeah, I have like a ton of different songs, a ton of live performances. Have a few covers on there, like I did a Billie Eilish Bad Guy cover. Very interesting, yeah, very cool. One of my favorite videos I've done, actually. But yeah, I'm out here on live like everybody else because, you know, during these times, you kind of got to be doing something. So yeah, here I am.
All right, well, it was great having you. So that was Joshua Mitchell performing his version of
Till the Morning Comes.
Am I frozen?
I'm just gonna keep it going. Hello.
Till the Morning Comes.
Yeah.
Till the morning comes.
So thank you so much. We're glad you could come, and we can hope we can have you next time. We'll see you. And that's all for the show, folks. Be sure to check out some more of Joshua Mitchell's music, as well as some of Sid's Instagram connections. And this has been our special edition of the Hear Us Out Show, brought to you by WPPM LP Philadelphia 106.5 FM Philly Cam Community Radio, streaming live from both the main station and the Facebook page. I'm here with Ramtastic and Keyssh, and that's all for the show, folks.
We got a show with you when we introduce what you want to hear about. We talk about our truths and give you news from out our studio. So come in, tune and get you moving. We need you to hear us out.
Hear us out. Hear us out. Hear us out.
Yeah,
Hear us out.
What?
Hear us out. Hear us out. Hear us out. Hear us out.